Good morning, everyone. It's your boy Gsluke here with our round 2 live stream for the Sony Open. Excited to get after it here on this lovely Friday, and hopefully everyone out there is having a solid start to their final day of the work week. So whether you're at work tuning in, whether you're at home sipping on some coffee, let's go ahead and get after it for Friday's action. So first off, welcome on in, everyone. Say hi down in chat if you guys are down here, and let's go over any of your questions for today. We'll start off with a look at the weather, how that'll impact DFS and props. We'll go through some of the strategy out there for Showdown today. And then towards the end of the video, so probably about 30 minutes in, is when we're going to go over the prop side of things. So just to give you an idea of the schedule for today and what we'll be touching on. So let's go ahead, hop right on in with first off, a look at the golf course for Thursday, which played maybe slightly more difficult than even what I was expecting. Excuse me there, guys. We knew there was going to be winds, right? We went over that on the Wednesday live stream. Looked pretty nasty, and that's exactly what we got. If you split it by the two waves, you'll see the PM wave played significantly harder than the morning, which was not unexpected, right? We expected those guys to get a little bit blown off the course, but I'd say the morning wave only playing about a half a stroke under par was maybe a little bit more surprising. So pins for round one were pretty tough. You had the weather conditions that were nasty out there, right? 20 miles an hour of sustained winds. But for round two, it's going to look a whole lot different. A lot of that is due to the weather, and a lot of it's also due to setup. So let's go ahead and show you what I'm talking about. So first off, we've got a weather report up here. We're going to go through a few of the different models, but all of them are calling for lower winds, right? It's not like it's going to be 4 or 5 miles an hour lower winds. It is significantly lower when it comes to those weather conditions. So first off in the morning, right, sub 10 miles an hour sustained winds here. You can see in the afternoon, they have it kicking up a little bit, like we were looking at on the Wednesday live stream, but not nearly the kind of conditions that we had for Thursday. Medio blue model over here, also calling for pretty calm conditions the entire day. Maybe not as much of a split between the morning and the afternoon, but once again, right, not those 30, 35 mile an hour winds that we had there for the first day's action. NEM model over here, you can see it's also relatively calm. This one's actually calling for it to calm down in the afternoon, which I'm frankly not sure if I buy, but hey, just a data point that we can work off of there. This GFS model, kind of similar to the Medio Blue, right? Pretty flat the entire day, I would say. And then the ECM over here, significantly lower winds in the morning than the afternoon. So the one real conflicting point here, it's more important for DFS than anything, right, is this NEM model that's calling for it to calm down at the end of the day is a little bit interesting, right? Like I said, I don't necessarily buy that we're going to see it drop off so much. But if it did, those PM wave golfers might be the ones you want for Showdown. So rather than going out there and only playing AM guys for my Showdown lineups on Draftkings, I'm going to have a little split between the two waves. Now, I'm favoring the AM guys because they'll have the receptive greens. They're not going to be putting on scuffed up greens. They'll have the prime conditions to go out there. But because the winds are dying off a little bit, they'll be playing on harder greens, right? They're not going to be as receptive as the morning wave, but they might be playing in slightly better weather conditions. So I could see the two waves playing to about the same average. I could see them maybe playing, 0.2 strokes easier in the morning than what you see in the afternoon. But I don't think we're going to see this massive one-stroke difference, or say about 0.78 strokes, right, between the two waves there that we saw out there for Thursday. So your strategy for Showdown, I'd say, is a lot less polarized than what you should have done from yesterday. From the prop side of things, you could probably still take some PM wave golfers. So as of now, a lot of my exposure is on the morning wave, just trying to see how conditions play out for the first few hours. And then if we get easier conditions like I'm expecting, I'll probably hammer some unders for those PM wave guys as well. So that's my thought process. In terms of your pin locations, I think there's quite a bit we can talk about there too. Number 10 is a drivable par 4. We'll be playing straight downwind today, and it's a front pin. So rather than it being tucked the whole way in the back right, this hole's likely going to play a lot easier. Hole 9 is playing a little bit longer than what you had for round 1, but that's that downwind par 5, right? Where guys were hitting like 150-yard shots in, at most like 175-yard shots into a par 5. So the fact that this one's in the center of the green, right, it's not tucked over a bunker, you're going to see a lot of eagles at hole number 9 again. And then finally, your last par 5 is 18 over here. Your day 1 pin location was tucked just over this bunker. For round 2, it's over there on the right side. So if you miss to the right, it's going to be a little bit of a tough up and down. But if you miss the whole way to the left, you're going to have all the green to work with. And of course, if you end up hitting the green, it's a front pin location, so you might be able to get it close. So I would say that both par fives look significantly easier. Hole number 10 also looks significantly easier than what we had for round one. Whereas the two tough holes out there, so just to point those out, well, it's 13 over here is a back pin. It's one of the tougher holes. And then hole number 5 is another back pin. That was also one of the tougher holes out there in the golf course. Both are going to play slightly into the wind here for Friday. But if the harder holes are playing harder and the easier holes are playing easier, this looks a whole lot like a moving day set of pins. So I think they're trying to set it up for scoring today, particularly with the lower winds. You're probably going to see a scoring average of, I'd say, at least 0.6, 0.7 strokes under par, if not better than a stroke under par for the day. So it's going to be a 9-day difference between the 2 days. Let's see. The weather forecast here in Data Golf is actually a little bit stronger than I would say I would see at other places around the industry. But even with that, right, I think they're calling for like a 0.6 stroke average. So let me double check on their other page here, just so I'm not misquoting Data Golf. But yeah, they're calling for it to play right about 0.6 under par. So had to stop sharing my screen because a lot of stuff that you have to pay for in Data Golf there. Can't show you guys, unfortunately. But yeah, they're calling for it to play a lot easier than what you had for round one. So it's good that Data Golf agrees with that. The weather looks pretty timid compared to what we had for Thursday. It's not going to be completely calm out there, right? So don't get me wrong. You know, if we look at this, right, 10-mile-an-hour winds is not completely calm, but it's not nearly as impactful as what we had the day before. So just look through these again. I'd say the worst model, right, is calling for the high winds in the afternoon. If you're going to lean one way or the other when you get over to the Showdown side, I guess you would lean AM. That's kind of what I've done with my player pool, but that NEM model, which let me see when this updated. It was like, what, an hour ago? This ended up updating. It's adding a little wrinkle to things right out there in the PM wave. So track that up until lockout. We'll double check this towards the end of the live stream. But as of right now, those are my takes on the weather. Let's hop over to Draftkings now. Actually, our projections for Draftkings. And I'll talk through some plays for today. So first off, welcome on in, Carl. We got DePeach down there. Let's get back after it. Absolutely. We got Florida Luke in the building. Okay, I like that. Someone called me that. I was at the casino, actually, Hard Rock, and somebody that plays Prize Picks that watches these streams was like, yo, are you Gsluke? And he called me Florida Luke. So not the first time I heard that. Hey, if you're the guy I met at the casino, Carl, cheers to you, man. That was nice meeting you. Now let's hop into this. So we've got the Sony Open projections up. And anytime we're playing Showdown for rounds 2 and 3, it's always the rinse and repeat strategy, right? We're not going to overthink things when it comes to Showdown. You lock in a weather edge. That's the first step for rounds 2 and 3 Showdown. And then you play the game theory game. So for today, right, the weather edge, maybe not as important as what we'd have for most round 2, round 3 slates, but the game theory edge is going to be there. So a few just ideas. We have all the ownership for the field on here. And you want to try to be avoiding as much chalk as possible. Now, Aberg up here, he's a chalky player that I'm going to be getting to, but there's a time and place to take chalk, right? And normally it's on your top tier players. So guys like Corey Connors are still getting ownership. A lot of that is because of his main slate ownership. Kirk and Cole, after really solid rounds, are obviously going to be at inflated numbers. Benny Ann, too, right, was chalk that ended up hitting in round 1. It's all very predictable, right? Cam Davis, right, first round leader, is one of your higher owned players. Brendan Todd, right, up there in the top 5, also getting quite a bit of ownership. Steven Yeager after a -4 round. You have Aaron Rye down here after nearly being first round leader. Taylor Montgomery, right, at 11.3% ownership. It's all the guys that played well on Thursday that are getting that steam, and then a Ludwig Aberg. And the reason why Aberg's getting the ownership is he's that much better than everyone else in the field, right? This is not a course that's set up for Aberg. This is kind of like the RSM Classic, a course more meant for plotters, more accuracy type of players. Aberg won the RSM Classic, right? So if he can win at that type of track, he could certainly play well here, which is why I think a lot of people are getting there, on top of the fact that he's the only AM wave guy up here. So if you're trying to lock in somebody on the pristine greens, the receptive conditions, then Aberg's one of your only options, right? You've got Aberg there. You've got Corey Connors that you can choose from, who's maybe slightly lower owned. But that's why you're seeing that increase in ownership there. People know about the weather situation, right? People know that the morning wave typically plays easier than the afternoon. Now, there'll be exceptions to that rule, but you'll notice that with ownership projections. It's something that I account for, right, is the public getting sharper and sharper when it comes to that edge. And it kind of takes away from the edge at times, right? A lot of times when we have, let's say, a half a stroke to a stroke difference between the two waves, Aberg would be even more popular, right? Even after a shitty round of only shooting even par, if we were dealing with a true weather edge here for Thursday, he'd be like 30% owned. So that's just something you have to keep in mind, right? Playing the edge will matter, but more and more people are starting to do so, which takes away from some of the value we have there. These PM Wave guys aren't unplayable. In fact, I'm playing one of these top 3 guys in my player pool, so don't feel like you have to avoid them, but I do like the AM guys just a little bit more, mostly because of the receptiveness of the greens. So, maybe pick 1, 2 of those guys up there that are in the PM Wave and shell them out, and then go with the rest AM guys. I'm taking Sahith Theegala after a really crappy round. He's extremely, what's the word for it? Inconsistent is probably the proper way to put it. I was going to say something a little bit more rude, but we're not going to be rude to Theegala, right? Absolute nice guy, but lost 3 strokes putting in round 1. He's a loose cannon. He's very inconsistent, like I mentioned before. But one thing he does do consistently is putt the ball well, right? Even on Bermuda grass, which is by far his worst surface, he's still a gainer for his career. So they're at, $9,700, one of the lower ownership numbers in this range. He's the type of player that I'm trying to get to, right? I actually have a lot more faith in these guys that need to bounce back than the guys like a Cam Davis, for example, that have to go out there and try and back up a super low round, right? He's got the inflated ownership numbers on him. He's got the pressure of being in the lead to deal with, whereas somebody like Sahith Theegala, right, is dealing with house money, right? He's at +2. He's 2-3 shots out of the cut line at this point. With the easier conditions, I think the cut to get to at least like -1, if not something like -2 by the end of play today. So Sahith's got to get after it, right? He's got to make birdies. He knows he has to be aggressive to even make the weekend. Those are the kind of plays that I like getting to, right? Opposed to, oh, I'm in first place, I don't want to give away the golf tournament. Maybe rather than hitting driver like Cam Davis was doing in round 1, he gets the hole 14 that's playing downwind and he goes, you know what? It'd be a real shame if I hit it out of bounds. Let's go ahead and hit an iron off the tee, right? That takes away some of that firepower that some of these players are known for. And, with Aberg, it's that same thing, right? He's an even par. He doesn't care about making the weekend. Aberg is trying to win this golf tournament. And you could best be assured that Aberg is going to go out there and take aim at every single pin. So those are the players I prefer. You also get a little bit of a game theory edge there too. I'm also going for a bounce back in JT Poston, who, if he had played well in round 1, would probably be at least 25% ownership. But because he shot even par, now we get him about half that number. So $9,300, he's the type of player that I'm also looking to on this kind of slate. And it's not just because, he's the bounce back, a lower owned player. Good track record around here, was my top play going into the week. So now we can get him at a discounted ownership mark and a discount. I should say maybe not discount price-wise. He's actually a little bit more expensive than what he was for 4-round contests. But at a discount from the game theory perspective, gotta love that. So I'm taking JT Poston for a bounce back. Siwoo Kim is a PM Wave golfer I'm looking to. He just could not make a putt. Was hitting the ball beautifully, was hitting a lot of fairways, and most importantly, his iron play was absolutely electric. So $8,600. I know he's in that PM Wave that might be slightly more difficult than what we have in the morning, but we're also only getting 11.9% ownership on a player that won here last year and a player that led the field in shots gained putting. That feels like a spot that I have to get to. I got Adam Svensson, a piece of chalk this week that played horribly in round 1. If you can't tell the little theme here, right? I'm trying to take guys that we're getting ownership discounts on, right? Guys that in a Svensson that everyone loved heading into the week. He shoots a +1 yesterday, and now everyone wants to throw him to the curb. So I disagree with that assessment. Those are the types of players I'm buying back in on. Akshay Bhatia, you could say the same thing about. -1 maybe wasn't nearly as disappointing as what you get with the other players, but still only have them at about 6.2% owned. Justin Suh shot +3 in round 1. Another player that has to be aggressive to go out there and make the cut. Maybe we'll get a 5-6 under par round from Suh. They can go out there and make the weekend. So love him at about 2.9% ownership. Emiliano Grillo, +1, right? Another player behind the 8 ball. Again, it's more than a trend at this point. This is how I play Showdown for rounds 2 and 3. 3.3% ownership, and a player that's known for making birdies in bunches. We've had Griot as a first-round leader more than a handful of times over the last few years, and even more prevalently up there in the conversation. So definitely love that. Down here in the 6K range, I say bottom end of the sevens too. Taylor Pendrith, right? Didn't play horribly day one, but also not getting that much attention. Maybe worth a few looks in Showdown. Mark Hubbard down here, another aggressive player. Didn't play horribly, right? Even par, 1 under par, was about average, right? Par for the field, but these kind of guys aren't getting steamed up. That's why I like getting to them. Hayden Buckley, a player that was in contention last year, only 4.5% ownership and has to be aggressive to make the cut. I feel pretty good about his chances there. Down there, Nate Lashley, same thing, +1, right? Only 0.9% owned. These are the types of players I'm getting to. And I think the last one we'll go over here is going to be Ches Reavie at $6,200. This one is a lot more of a flyer than the rest, as he's a little bit further behind the 8-ball. But Ches Reavie is a perfect fit for the course, right? Accurate off the tee. One of the better players from 150 yards and in, and can get really hot with that flat stick. So he's probably not making the cut, but maybe he'll go out there, shoot something like 4 or 5 under par, and get himself to that optimal lineup. So those are the shots I'm taking. If you want to take some chalk, right, like a Cam Davis, you have to play today, right? A Kirk, a Cole, something like that. You can make it work, right? You can make it fit in, right? I'm playing Aberg today, but don't make a habit of it. Showdown is the format you want to be the most different with, the one you want to go for the most differentiation because of how much variance there is. When you're only playing 18 holes of golf, right? Golf's already extremely random over a 4-round sample size. We get some crazy outcomes, right? Like Chris Kirk winning the elevated event last week. In an 18-hole sample size, it's even more exaggerated. So just go out there, fade the public is an extremely profitable strategy out there for Showdown. And that's the way that I'm handling things here for Thursday. That's all I've got. We'll go over any player questions in chat and then talk some lineup construction. Thoughts on any of these guys? We've got Kirk and Eckroat, Rye, Coles, Pavon, List, and Woo. So I'll say that Kirk and Rye would be a little bit chalky. So I'm not the biggest fan of those guys. But let's see. Eckroat, okay. Coles played pretty well round one. I'm okay with that. Pavon, List, and Woo. I'm okay with it, Carl. It feels like you're trying to tail like guys that had a really good round one. And if that's kind of what you're going for, again, I'd kind of like shield against that. It's hard to back up a good round on the PGA Tour. You're going to get a few players that do it, but you're also buying almost everyone on that list at inflated ownership numbers, right? Because they played well in round one, they're sometimes 2-3 times higher owned than the rest. And their hit percentage, right? Their optimal rate out here on a Friday is the exact same as everyone else. I guess that's the point I'm trying to make, right? If everyone has like the same chance to go out there and pop, there might be marginal differences between the players, then you just want to take the lower owned of the bunch. And unfortunately, a lot of those guys are pretty chalky. What's going on, Carolina? Glad to be back for the golf season. Glad to have you back, man. Do you like Connors or Poston for a cash game? I'd go with Connors. If I'm playing cash today, Connors makes a ton of sense. The track record speaks for itself, right? He has like all top 12 finishes. He's like even par, so he's got to shoot like -2, maybe even -3 to feel comfortable to make it to the weekend. I'd go Corey Connors, right? Very consistent player, has a relatively high floor. Poston I love as well, but yeah, in a cash format, when you're trying to count on a player, I feel like I can count on Corey Connors a little bit more. So maybe you could play both of them, right? Maybe you're not choosing between the two right there, but yeah, definitely would side towards Connors. Thoughts on Haddon? I think he's a decent play, PD. Kind of like all the guys up here that are in the PM wave. You're getting a slightly lower ownership number, and Matt Fitzpatrick could go off, right? Brian Harmon could actually hit fairways for once, and easily go out there and shoot a low round. I'm okay with it, right? Terrell Haddon can fill it up with the flat stick. Especially like ownership's lower on Haddon than pretty much everyone else, right? You got 14.5 on Harmon. You've got 15.3% out there in Haddon. That feels a little bit too low. So I like it for some differentiation. All right, let's talk some lineup construction. So let me bring up Draftkings, and I'll show you how we put together a few lineups. And then afterwards, we're going to talk props. So if you have prop questions, anything you want to touch on that, we'll be there in a second. So let's go over to Draftkings and show you guys what we're talking about. So when we're putting together lineups here for Friday, it's real simple for me, right? There's one chalky player I'm taking, and it's Ludwig Aberg. I'm not playing him in every lineup. So whenever I use Aberg, maybe I have to be slightly more different than the rest of my portfolio. But from the 8K range down, it is quite literally all guys that are sub 8% owned. And I think like there's 1-2 guys that are like 6 to 8% owned. And the rest of them are all like sub 5%. So if I threw Aberg into a lineup, I can play whoever the hell I want, quite literally, with the type of strategy that I'm playing. So let's go ahead and throw Thagala in there. Let's go down to this 8K range and throw Svensson, right, for a little bit of leverage. Up here in the top of the 7s, throw Batia in, right? Like, you see, there's not much of a thought process or much thought needed when I'm putting together my lineups, right? I'm just taking low-owned guys, mixing and matching them into lineups. This is how your Showdown builds should be, right? For main slate, we're usually thinking a lot more. We're trying to pick pieces of chalk that we want to get to. At least for me, especially like on a Sunday Showdown, it changes things, right? Sunday Showdown, we've got the placement points. The chalk matters there. Rounds 2 and 3 Showdown, make your life simpler, right? Especially if you don't start with an Aberg, let's go ahead and just throw Haddon there, right? I know we had him mentioned a few minutes ago. You start with somebody like Haddon, play whoever the hell you want at the other 5 spots. So it's a lot simpler to go out there and play Showdown if you're being differentiated about it. Even if you're not, let's say that you wanted to play like a Cam Davis, right? So just for the sake of this video, let's go ahead and throw in like 2 pieces of Mega Chalk. As long as you're differentiating at the rest of your lineup, who the hell cares, right? Let's say that you're playing let's find a lower owned guy up here. Let's throw Poston in, right? Poston's relatively low owned. You throw in a Poston up here in the 7s. You throw in like a Justin Suh, right, at sub 5% ownership. Now you're just fine with your differentiation, right? Now it doesn't matter that you're playing a chalky Cam Davis, as long as you're taking guys that aren't mega chalky down here, right? So maybe don't take a Taylor Montgomery, right, up there at like 8% ownership. Maybe instead you go, you know what? I'll go down here and take a Keith Mitchell, right? A chance on a highly volatile player. If you're last man in, there's not really any chalk down here. So you can probably take whoever the heck you wanted to round out this kind of lineup. So I'm not a huge fan of Davis. I won't be playing him out here for today. But if you needed to, if you felt a need to play some chalk, it's more than easy enough to get there, right? Just differentiate in the 6 and 7K range, and you're going to be good to go. Now let's talk some props to see if there's any last second DFS questions. Looks like we have a couple. And afterwards, we'll talk about props. So we got Paul says last man in would be Zhang or Carl Wan. I'd go with Carl Wan, right? Norman Zhang is a little bit chalky after his round 1 performance. So I'd definitely go with Carl Yuan for sure. What is good, peeps? What's going on, Samuel? Welcome on in. Welcome on in, Go Birds, too. Little Rob down there, right? What's going on? PD says, is Bramlett in play? What did he end up at? And I'm going to look at his ownership first. So let me give you an answer in a second. So I think he's in play. Yeah, for sure. So let me share my screen, show you guys what I'm looking at over here. Bramlett, I've got it sub 1% ownership. He played decently in round 1, but not great, right? So that's why he's not getting all that ownership scheme. It's not the best course fit for him, but we've seen guys, right, go out there and break that mold before. I mean, just look at Cam Davis, right? More of a striper off the tee, can fill it up with a flat stick. That's kind of what a Joseph Bramlett is. And so I've seen crazier things happen. Now, he's probably not my favorite play, but at sub 1% ownership, he's giving you pretty much unlimited leverage. There's a time and place for it, right? If I was playing 150 lineups in round 2, I'm only playing 20. So I'm not playing with as large of a player pool. But if I was playing a full set of 150, Bramlett would be like a 5%er, right? A 3 to 5%er out there in my exposure. But yeah, at least for me today, I'm not getting there myself. But it's not because I don't like him. Thoughts on buying the dip on Svenny ownership? I love it. In fact, he's one of the plays we talked up on stream before you got here. So my main reasoning was exactly what you said, right? Buying the dip on ownership. He was chalky heading into this week for a reason. You can say the same thing about Siwoo Kim, right? He was chalk for a reason. JT Poston was chalk for a reason. All of these guys that just had like average day ones. And people will look at JT Poston here at even par and go, wow, he played shitty round 1. Not really. He played to the field average, right? I think it was like 0.06 shots worse than the field average. Okay, right? That happens. That's just golf, right? You're not always going to have your best stuff. Now we get him at half the ownership. Those are the exact kind of players I like. So definitely like your thought process there, Rob. Thoughts on Lipsky. So Lipsky, a little bit of a sneaky play. In fact, he's in my player pool for today. Not somebody that we touched on here, but let me see if I can find him here. 1 second, guys, while I search this up. Where are you at, Lipsky? I should have, yeah, there he is. I should have searched by more than just LI. LI, a very common combination of letters. Who would have known, right? All right, here we go with David Lipsky. So $6,600. Not the best round one, but only 1.5% owned. So yeah, what I like about Lipsky is that he's been putting better of late. Recent form can be a little bit tricky, right, this early in the year, but to end last season, he was a much better putter than he was the rest of the year. So I like that for Lipsky, right? When you're trying to spike a spike round, a ceiling round, you've got to go out there and putt well. So yeah, I like him, man. We still liking Bjork for a rebound? Yeah, absolutely. And again, people will say like rebound, right? Didn't he shoot like +1, right? Or +2, right? Like 2 shots worse than the average. Yeah, if people are going to look at that and be like, oh, I can't play that guy anymore, then sign me up for it, right? This is a player that made, I think it was 25 of 29 cuts on the DP World Tour, had, I think, somewhere in the range of like 10 top 5, top 10 finishes. Like, yeah, absolutely. I'm buying the dip. The entire field I'm doing that on, right? So this Adrian Dumonte Chassart kid, everyone was picking him to be rookie of the year. No one's going to play him today, and he could very well go out there and scorch the field. If you look at his shots gain metrics, he was making literally everything, and that's what he's known for, right? People say that he's one of the best short game players of all, like, they've ever seen. I was going to say all time, but that would have been way too much, right? But there have been a few people that have said that he has the best short game they've ever seen, right? And some of them have seen Jordan Spieth up and close. So $7,200, yeah, man. Any of these guys that you've heard a lot of good things about, don't let one bad round throw you off them, right? Like it's one round, right? It's an 18-hole sample size. It's nothing that you can get data from. That's for sure. Like if you're like, yeah, you get the point. You've been in this chat before, Paul, so I know you know your stuff. There's going to be a lot of people, though, that overreact to that, right? Like, for example, JT Poston's unplayable now, right? After shooting even par. Let them make that mistake, right? And then you guys can capitalize off it. All right, now let's talk some props. So let's go over to the prop side. For anyone that's just hopping in, we'll go over the weather and pins just briefly. If you want my full take on it, go back towards the beginning of the live stream. But the winds here for today look a lot lower than what we had there for Thursday. And there's some conflicting reports, right? A few of these weather forecasts are calling for lower winds in the morning. A few of them are actually calling for lower winds in the afternoon, like we have over here on this NAM model. Either way, though, it looks a lot better than what we had for Thursday. And when we look at these pin locations, it also looks like they're trying to set it up a little bit easier. So, for example, hole number 10 is a drivable par 4. That'll be in the front rather than the back right. Both par 5s, so 9 and 18. Are relatively accessible pins. So it looks like they're setting it up for better scoring, right? Like round 1, it played right around even par. Data Golf's calling for about a 0.6 under par average. I agree with that assessment, right? I think it'll play at least like 0.6 shots easier. And if the wind does kick down, so a few of these models, right? This one's calling for about 10 to 12 mile an hour winds. Medio Blue over here is calling for slightly worse winds. But if one of these lower wind forecasts, like this Icon model, for example, right, that's calling for sub 10 miles an hour in the morning, if that happens, right, if we get real calm conditions out there, I mean, we could see a 1.5 under par scoring average. Just to give you an idea, let me bring up the Sony Open averages just to show you why I say that, right? Like this course is not normally difficult. And it's actually normally one of the easier courses on tour. So let me go ahead and show you some of the stats from the last few years. So this is from 2023. You can see the first few rounds, 0.5 under, 0.8 under in round 2, and then rounds 3 and 4, 2.3 under, right? 1.75 under. But you go to 2022, the scoring average for the whole week was 2 under par. But you can see over here, even had a 3 under par scoring average on Sunday. Then we go to 2021. There was a 2.25 under par scoring average. This course is extremely wind dependent, as you can tell, right? Normally it doesn't play anywhere near as difficult as what we had for day 1. And conditions were soft, right? We had receptive greens. If anything, that normally leads to better scoring. So I think we're going to see it revert to this kind of average like we've seen over the last few years, which is going to have us taking a lot of unders on prize picks. For strokes and unders over there on Underdog as well. So I'll go through a few of my favorites, one slip over on each site that you guys can consider. But yeah, should be some value today. At least that's the way that I'm seeing things. Let's hop over to Underdog, give you guys one of the slips I'm entering. So first off, we'll take an over on Ludwig Aberg. For birdies, that is. And then we're going to take an under on JT Poston strokes. So go ahead, throw those two in there. Aberg averages over 4.75 birdies per round. And that's compared to an average on tour of 3.75. So it makes right around a birdie more per round than your average tour player. And then at this kind of field, we normally see about a 4 birdie per round average. And again, I'll show you guys some data on what we've seen in the Sony over the last few years. So bear with me while I bring up Bet the Number for you guys. So here's Bet the Number. Let's change this to the Sony Open, right? So it's showing us the right stuff. So over the last 3 years, and this isn't birdies or better, this is just birdies per round. It's been over a 4 average, right? So somebody like Ludwig Aberg that, makes about a birdie more than your average for the field projects for at least 5 birdies, right? And considering the fact that he's going off early in what should be some of the better conditions of the entire day, makes me like him even more. So that's why we're taking the over in Ludwig Aberg, stat play and a little bit of a rebound play. And then with JT Poston, it's the same thing, right? Going off early, did not have anything going with the putter yesterday. So just to show you guys a few of the stats. So let's go down here to JT Poston. Where you at, JT? There you are. So in round 1, JT was a slight loser on approach, which I don't love, right? We always want to see guys gaining with the approach play, but he lost strokes with the putter, which is just completely unheard of for JT Poston. He's on Bermuda grass, which is by far his best surface. He's one of the better Bermuda grass putters in the world. And on these greens, has been pretty solid over the last 3-4 starts. So I'm looking for him to rebound in the putting category. He's going to have much easier conditions today than playing in that PM wave yesterday with those like 30, 40 mile an hour winds. So he's got to make the cut too, right? So he's got that going for him, right? Needs to shoot like -2 to make the cut. So he has the motivation lining up. He should be rebounding with the putter if he can revert back to his career baseline. And again, when the motivation and the stats start to line up is when I start to love taking players. And with Aberg, it's also worth mentioning that he's here to win the golf tournament, right? He's not here to try and make the cut. So he's also at, I believe, even par, if memory serves me correctly. Let me double check that. I believe he's even par. Yeah, right next to JT Poston right here. He's not concerned about shooting 2 under par, right? Aberg is going to try and shoot 5, 6 under par. So that's why I took him for birdies on top of the stats backing that up. JT Poston, though, might have to be a little bit more conservative, right? He's not always win or bust like somebody of an Aberg's level, which is why I went in that direction. So this slip here, I entered for $100 before we got on stream here. And I might take some PM guys later, right? Kind of like I mentioned before. A few of these models are calling for it to calm down in the afternoon. If we're going to get those conditions that are, sub 10 miles an hour in the afternoon, there are going to be a lot of value in these PM guys as well. So I haven't taken the dip myself on a guy like a Henley who's going off late, a Justin Rose going off late, or even like a Siwoo Kim. But if we do end up seeing that it's clear out there, I'm going to fire on those guys in the afternoon. So that's worth noting over there on the Underdog side. Now let's cycle over to Prize Picks and show you guys a slip over there. So on the Prize Pick side, not as much value. It's honestly very similar board. The birdie or better board is the exact same across both sites. No Aberg over here on Prize Picks, but a couple strokes props I'm taking, right? So for as bad as the value is, in my opinion, no greens props, no fairway props being posted here for round 2, you can at least take 2 unders on strokes together. So what I went with for a slip, let's find them on here. It was Keegan Bradley and Harris English. So both of these players have really solid track records around Waialae. Just to give you an idea, Harris English's last 4 years has made the cut every single time and has a top 25 finish. T32, T55, and T73 aren't great, but he's been very consistent, right? He's one of the few players that's made the cut every time he's played here over his last 5 years. And Keegan Bradley has 2 top 12 finishes, also a T29 over his last 5 years. So for 2 players that seemingly like Waialae Country Club that are there at -1.5 for a projection, I like that they're going off early, should have the better conditions out of the day, and in day 1 covered. Right? You had Harris English, who I believe shot 3 under par. Actually, no, he shot 4 under par in round 1. And then Keegan Bradley, who got the 3 under par himself. So hopefully they can continue that, right? Try and roll on that momentum here for day 2. I kind of like some of the bounce back guys more. right? Kind of like a JT Poston, but I didn't want to overexpose myself, right? And take the same guy twice. So that's why I went with Keegan Bradley in English. There's different schools of thought when it comes to taking these golf props. Some people like that people played well in round one. I'm kind of on the fence between the two, right? I like that regression towards the mean, like these two, for example, right? Harris English is probably going to regress towards the mean a little bit, right? He's probably not going to shoot -4 again, but we only need him to shoot -2. So I'm still okay with taking these props, but just a few different ways to think about it, right? Like with JT Poston, right? It's weird how we think as golf bettors, right? We say, here we go, he didn't play well in round one, so he's going to in round two. That's kind of like a backwards thought, right? And I'm calling myself out here a little bit because like we do this all the time as golf bettors. But then with guys like Keegan Bradley in English, we'll be like, oh, but they played ball in round one, so they ball in round two. It's like, which one's right, right? So just spitballing right there. But yeah, I like these two on Prize Picks. Solid combination. They only pay 2.75x, which is pretty shitty. I'm out there from Prize Picks, but it's what we have to deal with. They literally don't pay out 3x on cards unless you're taking like birdie or better matchups, which I ain't going to do here for round two. It never goes well when I take matchups. Let's see. Robert McIntyre thoughts. I think he's a decent play, low-owned play, that's for sure, PD. In terms of his ownership, I'll give you an exact number, but it's not much. Where are we at, Mac? Bobby Mac. Oh, I passed him. Let me find him for you. So he's a 1.8% owned. I don't love the fact that he's a PM Wave golfer, but I mean, he's from Scotland, right? He's used to those conditions on the DP World Tour. Totally fine with it. He's a really good driver of the golf ball. So if he can drive it long and straight today, that's exactly how you can go out there and have a true, 6-7 under par ceiling round. So I like it, PD. I think he's a decent play for sure. But yeah, other than that, that's all I've got. I mean, we can look at some of these matchups if we have any questions on them, but I'm not going to enter them myself. Quite literally every time I play matchups, I end up losing on them. So it's just not worth it, right? These and the reason for that, by the way, is birdie or better matchups are completely random, right? You can have somebody, for example, like a Sahith Theegala today that I think is going to make a bunch of birdies, still shoot over par because of all the different double bogeys out there and whatnot. And even though he might shoot over par, and let's say like Brian Harman, makes 3 birdies and shoots -3, he might beat Brian Harman in a birdie or better matchup despite playing like absolute dog shit. So it's just, I avoid them. They're triggering. They're absolutely tilting when I play them. And I try to stick to the props that are more predictable, right? If we get the course conditions right, if we're able to read that weather forecast and use it to our advantage, you get a legit built-in edge with these sort of props. Better matchups, everyone's playing on the same golf course, right? So they're maybe less inconsistent when it comes to the weather, but honestly, golf weather and golf conditions are the edge when it comes to golf betting. So that's why I try and stick to that. Let's go ahead and go over to Hard Rock Bet. I actually wanted to do that and almost forgot here on stream. So it's a good thing I caught myself. Let's take a look at some of the 3 balls that we can go through. I didn't do any for round one, but I certainly wouldn't mind a little dabble here for round two. So let me get signed into my Hard Rock app. Oh, hopefully we don't unplug our oh, shit. My cord is right behind the number I have to hit, so let's hopefully not fuck it up. And what's the last 6? Oh, shouldn't say that out loud. Okay, there we go. All right. Here's Hard Rock Bet. Let's look it through a few things. So let's bring up the golf odds, see what we're working with here. Do they not have any matchups up? It makes sense. So because the round didn't end for round one, they didn't post any matchups, and they didn't even update the outright odds board. So that's disappointing. Let's look at the NFL board. Do something on here, right? Since we logged in, look at that. Steelers 9.5-point underdogs. Totally agree with that, by the way. They should be. Maybe even should be bigger underdogs. Eagles -3. Eagles could totally lose to the Bucks. That'd be quite something, especially on the road, right? I mean, first off, they've lost how many games out of their last 6? I think it's 5 of their last 6. Going to Baker Mayfield's home, I might dabble on the Bucks comes on Monday. We'll have to see. That's going to be a damn good matchup, right? Rams, Lions. 2 quarterbacks going against their old team. Well, that's going to be a juicy one. Packers, Cowboys. Cowboys are going to win, but you can't bet on the Cowboys in the playoffs, right? They choke every year, so you can't do that. Dolphins, Chiefs. Chiefs might be free money. But, you got these Florida boys down here, right? Going over there to like negative 20-degree weather. It ain't going to go well. So we'll have to see. We're going to have some NFL content coming out this weekend. We'll have to see what we end up betting on that side. That's all I've got here for the round 2 stream, though, guys. Appreciate all the support in the channel here per usual. Go ahead, smash that like button on the way out of here. Also, subscribe so you don't miss our content from rounds 3 and 4. For access to all the projections you see in my videos, my entire player pool for today, check out my Patreon page. And also, for all the different prop action that I'm taking, I'm going to be posting it all in there as well. Like I mentioned, this PM wave might be right for the taking if we get calm conditions. So if we end up getting that, we'll be posting a bunch over there for tomorrow, for today, right? We're already here on Friday. So let's go ahead, get after it. Hopefully have ourselves a slate, and best of luck with all of your exposure, guys.